I understand a lot of people's confusion over the guardianship, and the problem is everyone's seeing the ending of it, and they don't know anything about the beginning. On January the 27th of 2005, Luke was driving to Dallas, and he hit a bump near Canton where the road dips, and he hydroplaned into the median, which was very small. The grass was. It wasn't very wide. He overcorrected several times, as his roommate told us, who was also in the vehicle with him. The truck then catapulted into the air, landed in oncoming traffic, the passenger side down first, and then it rose up in the air, and it slammed down again, and then a Lexus hit him, and Luke was taken by ambulance to Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas. After 47 days in ICU, Luke got to go over to BSH, which is Baylor Specialty Hospital. And that was always a big excitement for all of us who lived in the waiting room at Baylor University Medical Center, because when you got to go to BSH, that means you were getting better. And so Luke was improving daily. He was gradually, they were bringing him out of his induced coma. He was in a medically induced coma to keep him still because of the hydrocephalus on his brain. That's the fluid. When he arrived at BSH, the doctors at Baylor University Medical Center ICU had appointed Dr. David Beard, who was a pediatric internist, and he was to be over the case, and he was to put together a team of a neurologist, a pulmonologist, and an infectious disease doctor. Well, Luke, he never ever got this team together. Whenever he came into Luke's room, he never brought Luke's chart with him, nor did he know that my son could verbalize and follow commands. He would come into Luke's room and yell in his face to see if he would respond. And Luke would get this frightened look on his face and just freeze. I tried to tell him, you must talk softly to him. The doctor told my daughter that he had tried to avoid me because I asked too many questions. He would never see Luke when I was there. He began to only see Luke on Saturdays when the father and the grandmother and grandfather would come up. And I just felt like he didn't even treat Luke like a person. I wanted a doctor who would come in and see Luke every single day. This wasn't happening. All the other patients were seeing the doctors every single day. Finally, after 6 weeks of being there, I decided that I would take this list, and I'd ask him to leave. I asked for a new doctor. I followed protocol, and then, of course, I took him in. We went over to the chapel, my daughter and I, and we asked that we fired him, and we said we no longer want you on Luke's case. We want a new doctor. We want a neurologist. We want a pulmonologist. We've been asking this forever. Luke has got green mucus all around his trach and his nose, and he was just having a hard time breathing. And this doctor kept saying, he's fine, he's fine. He told me that the green mucus was his quote, everyone has green boogers. Well, you know, after having a daycare with 35 children, you know that when children have yellow in their nose, well, that means they're getting sick. When it's green, you take them to the doctor. You know, I've raised 3 children and had 35 children at daycare, so mothers just know that. Well, he didn't want to go along with that. So we had several incidents over the period of the 6 weeks Luke was there, and finally I went to administration, and I felt like I really needed to talk with them about some of the things that were going on. I went in, and this is the little list I took. That was all. I said that the gallbladder, the doctor, Luke had went and had a cholecystomy, which they checked for his gallbladder to see if it was okay to take the tubes out, and they said that everything was fine, it was time to take them out. Well, I talked to Dr. Beard about it, and he said, well, it's not going to hurt to leave it 5 to 6 weeks. Well, about 5 days later, I asked him again, and he said, oh, it'll be fine. Well, the nurses had told me that this was dangerous, that Luke could become reinfected. They took his gallbladder bag full of black bile. He folded it in half and wrapped it all up in the cord and put a rubber band around it and left it hanging on Luke's side. And so it had been tied off for several weeks. And so I asked him if he was going to wait for it to get infected again. And I said the nurses said they get infected. He said, those nurses don't know anything. They don't know a thing. And I told him, you know, the nurses spend 12 hours a day with my son. They know more than you even know. And I told him that he needed to get Luke's chart and look at these things. So then he had an MRI, and Luke, when he was sent over to have an MRI over at the Baylor Medical Center from BSH, they got him over there and they had him on a little plastic, it was a little plastic carrying thing actually, and it didn't even have a mattress in it, and it was hard, and Luke was over there waiting his turn for about an hour. When it finally came his turn, they looked at him and said, well, he's moving everywhere. We can't do an MRI when he's moving. And I said, I know. Didn't the doctor order anything? They said no. So they had to get in touch with the doctor. The doctor said, I didn't know he moved. And so, I mean, Luke would actually, he could kick his legs, kick his arms. He could reach back and get the blood pressure monitor with a little black rubber hose and actually pull it and do his little exercises with it. And every day, he'd reach in the nurse's pocket and go for her keys, and he was just very active and very vocal. So we got over there, and then they had to send a team over to administer Ativan, and then it was another 35 minutes. Then Luke lost his turn. Then he had to wait for another hour and a half. And Luke was over there for a 3-hour ordeal, which I was upset about. This doctor didn't even know enough about Luke to know that he moved and to even sedate him. So I talked with them about that, and later, about a week or so later, I'd asked him if the MRI report came back. He said no. And so one evening I asked the nurses at the nurse station if Luke's MRI report came back. And she said, yeah, it's in here. And she said, I'll print you a copy. So she printed me a copy. Well, I took it home and looked up on the internet every single cingulate gyrate, every hydrocephalus, every ventricle, every hematoma, everything that was on there. And realized that the hydrocephalus was so much, the fluid on his brain was so much that it was causing his axonal causing a crevice down his axonal, making fluid separate his brain, and therefore it was causing his motor movements to be very uncoordinated. He also had an egg-shaped sac full of water pressing against the occipital, making him almost blind, and he had a blood clot in the side of his head. So when I questioned the doctor about this, he was furious. You shouldn't have that information. Who gave you that information? And just had a fit.